The Rundown with Carrie Saldo podcast is funded by Armbrook Village Senior Living in Westfield, offering assisted living and compass memory support with evidence-based treatment for those with memory loss. More at armbrookvillage.com.
This is The Rundown, your weekly news and review from Western Mass. I'm Carrie Saldo. It's Friday, July 26th, 2024. Who has their nose on the news this week? Why, it's Dusty Christensen, NEPM's own. Namu Semphat, the reporter with the Springfield Republican. And joining us by phone, Eric Lesser, an attorney and former state senator from the 413. Coming up later in the show, we'll discuss whether a recent crop of judicial nominees, including one from Western Mass, will help ease the workload in Superior Court, and proposed legislation could reduce the burden on homeowners struggling to pay past due property taxes. Do this week's Rundowners think that has a chance? Plus, with the Summer Olympics starting today, I'll ask this week's Rundowners their favorite game to play. Tell us your favorite game or whatever else is on your mind relative to this week's news. Email therundown@nepm.org. That's the rundown at nepm.org. Well, panel, I don't know about you, but the 2024 race for the White House is starting to very much feel like something that Aaron Sorkin, famed screenwriter, could be writing and consulting on here. Just a very quick recap. In less than a month, we've had a presidential debate that left, I think, Democrats and Republicans alike scratching their heads a bit, an assassination attempt on a former president and now GOP nominee Donald Trump. And on Sunday, weeks after a lackluster debate performance, President Joe Biden reversed his position and dropped out of the 2024 presidential race. He tapped Vice President Kamala Harris to run at the top of the Democratic ticket, who, fun fact, will be in Pittsfield Saturday for a sold-out fundraiser. The Harris is likely in for Dems announcement has sparked a barrage of memes and attention from major pop culture figures. And I want to thank NEPM's Nirvani Williams for her explainer and catch-up on this one. Her reporting connecting the dots on why Kamala Harris being brat is a good thing. Here's some more perspective on that.
One of the biggest viral sensations in the political zeitgeist right now is British pop singer Charli XCX tweeting, "Kamala is brat," likening Harris to her new album of the same name. The musician describes a brat as someone who is honest, blunt, and despite being a little unsure, ultimately believes in herself.
And I'm a brat fan. My friends know that. So I think just seeing that was like really funny.
He's a brat, seeing that as really funny. Sean there, a UMass student who spoke with Nirvani Williams. A very different kind of funny for Democrats this week, where in recent weeks the jokes have been sort of at the candidate's expense. Now a bit of a script flip there. Eric Lesser, I'm hoping you're on the phone here. You worked on the Obama...
I am. Can you hear me?
Yes, thanks. You worked on the Obama White House and held statewide office here in Massachusetts. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, it's just a dramatic turn of events. I mean, the whole thing, I know we reference Aaron Sorkin. It also feels maybe a little bit like Veep. I think it was noticed that Veep saw record downloads from HBO Max over the weekend. So take from that what you want. But I think the point about the brat meme shows that, culture is upstream from politics. And Kamala's got tremendous cultural appeal. And basically overnight, you've seen a 180-degree change in how Democrats are feeling about this election and the energy and the enthusiasm that comes with that. And it's backed up by some hard support, $100 million raised in about 24 hours. The Biden super PAC got $150 million in new commitments. There's going to be a record fundraiser in the Berkshires on Saturday. So there's definitely been quite a change here in just a short period of time.
For sure. And now before I open this up to Dusty and Namu, I want to touch on the Republican side as well. Nirvani Williams pointed out where Donald Trump sits in this whole pop culture universe.
Even before Donald Trump became president, he made himself a pop culture icon by starring in his own reality TV series, The Apprentice, and made guest appearances in multiple movies, most famously Home Alone 2.
Excuse me, where's the lobby?
Down the hall and to the left.
Thanks.
Now, as the Republican presidential candidate, Trump already has an established internet presence, which has been amplified by the recent assassination attempt.
Now, Namu, in addition to being a journalist, you're also a young voter. Is upping one's game online and kind of having influencers backing you something you're watching your peers paying attention to, especially when it comes to the presidential race?
Yeah, definitely. I do see that a lot. I will say that I am often on TikTok, and a lot of what I see online, the discourse is about how relatable these candidates are to the younger voters. And I do see that on TikTok, especially being that Kamala's headquarters account has basically adopted this brat ideology. And
the Twitter banner is that slime green, the Charlie XCX slime green, right?
Yes, exactly. And it's just that, relatability, and that, in my opinion, it's the perfect way to get the younger voters to be, into her and maybe see more than just this political figure who's obviously had a successful career, but
Dusty, you've been away for a few weeks. I don't want to give a spoiler, and you didn't have electricity. You were totally off the grid. You're coming back from a foreign planet. Is that what it feels like?
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute, there were updates to the presidential race? What's happened? No, obviously I was paying really close attention. I think it's very Western Mass that at this fundraiser Kamala Harris is going to be going to in Pittsfield. It is exactly who you would have guessed would be playing in the Berkshires for a political fundraiser. Yo-Yo Ma, James Taylor. It feels very 413, very Berkshires.
Yeah, we'll be keeping an eye on that as well. Eric Lesser, you mentioned Veep. I found out this week, I feel like I'm the only one on the planet who didn't know, but you are a script consultant on Veep. And for those who don't remember, it's the HBO political comedy series, and the plot follows Senator turned Vice President turned President Selena Meyer. Here's a clip of Meyer, played by Julia Louis-Dreyfus, praying with her personal aide, Gary Walsh, who's played by Tony Hale. They're praying during a difficult time in her life.
The Lord, let her daughter, thy humble servant, be the first woman elected president of the United States. Please, this is so much to bear.
Oh, it is, Lord, it is.
Hear my prayer.
Hear her prayer.
Eric Lesser, did you consult on that scene?
I was part of that season and that episode, but I will say that real life is more crazy than anything that the most talented fiction writers could think up. So, and I think the last couple of weeks have shown that. But it's definitely a show that keeps on living.
For sure. I mean, we're going to see in the next coming months here if similar prayers from Kamala Harris that she might be making come true, or if we're going to watch the Republican foothold that Trump fans have win the day. But either way, it's going to be a long couple of months to November, I'm pretty sure, for everybody. Well, I'll move us on to news closer to the 413 here, and something, the headline, dearth of judges causing court bottleneck in Hampshire Superior Court across the state. This is a story by James Pentland out of the Daily Hampshire Gazette. The vacancies keep mounting as judges reach the retirement age of 70, and here's how Pentland reported that summertime is traditionally a slow time in the courts, with vacations eating into the judicial system's flow of business and occasionally leaving a court with no judge. This summer, the seasonal slowdown is only compounding the fact that there aren't enough judges, especially in Superior Court, which has 12 openings statewide, or 1 out of every 7 seats. Zooming into Western Mass, there's been no full-time judge assigned to Hampshire Superior Court this month, and nor is there one for September. Namu Sampath, as we know from your reporting in the Republican, Governor Healy late last week announced 5 nominations for Superior Court, including 1 from Western Mass. What do we know about Deepika Bain Shukla, who was among those nominees?
Yeah, great question. She is the first, she's of Indian descent. That's the first thing I want to point out. And as someone who's also of Indian descent, I think it's cool to see, other folks in the field who are, from our, heritage, who are doing really cool things in their fields. But anyway, she is the first woman of color, I believe, to be nominated for this position, and has had a really extensive career working on cases regarding terrorism, fraud, excessive force. So she's had a really extensive career. And so I'm excited to see what she has, going forward in her the rest of her career.
Yeah, more on her nomination coming up in a bit. But Eric Lesser, I want to pick your legal brain here a bit. Back to that vacancies issue. I don't know how much time you personally spend in Superior Court, but have you heard from colleagues what impact this lack of judges is having on the system in our region?
Well, the vacancies is a major issue, something I worked on quite a lot in the state Senate. It's important because it's a structural issue with a generational changeover. The presidential election may be an example of this too, but a generational changeover that's happening on the bench. I don't personally do work in Superior Court, but when you have vacancies, the judges are the holdup, to every decision and to everything that has to go through the court. So when there is a vacancy and you're not operating at 100%, you're delaying decisions that have immense downstream consequences, and they will delay decisions, that individuals are relying on, both for civil cases and for criminal. It's gotten harder to recruit judges, and it's become more challenging. I really give Deepika a lot of credit for stepping up. She's an excellent candidate. I know Tara Jacobs, our new governor's counselor, is really focused on this issue of vacancies in Western Mass in particular. So this is an area that really is going to need some focused attention. And we've got to look to, traditionally, unconventional places to recruit candidates, certainly more women, more people of color, more people from different types of legal backgrounds. Historically, there had been a kind of pipeline of assistant DAs and others into these judgeships. And I think increasingly we've got to look to other places in the legal profession to fill these vacancies.
And we did see the Boston Globe point out earlier this summer that certainly the nominees that Governor Healy has put forth have been, we've seen a number of women, we've seen a number of people of color, which is obviously a big shift from what we've seen in the past. And you're right, we did hear from Tara Jacobs from North Adams on the Governor's Council. She's been hammering on this issue for a while, saying Governor Healy said she's going to put forward more nominees. She really needs to be doing so. Just a quick primer on Superior Court. This is the court that handles major criminal cases, civil cases, and as James Pentland pointed out in the Hampshire Gazette, the lack of coverage means that these civil sessions in many cases are not being held at all, although, on balance, the clerk of courts says that many of these cases are settled before they go to the judge, so they're keeping forward motion in that particular way. Dusty, is there anything you wanted to add to this?
I just wanted to touch on what Eric said. I think it's important. Obviously, it's super important to that Governor Healy is committed to making judges more reflective of the community we have in Massachusetts, ethnically, racially. But it is important to also perhaps consider what that pipeline is. The Boston Institute for Nonprofit Journalism just put out an analysis yesterday that found that a full 60% of Massachusetts judges are ex-prosecutors, and another 48%, nearly half of Commonwealth judges, are former corporate lawyers. That leaves just 2% who worked at legal aid organizations to help poor people in civil matters. That is really important when you're talking about the judges who carry immense power in our legal system and are able to make decisions that by and large, impact poor people, especially in criminal matters. And
correct me if I'm wrong, Nemu, I think Ms. Shukla has a background in some of that legal aid work in addition to her prosecutorial work. So she's kind of a mixed bag there, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So it's very interesting because members of Western Massachusetts Bar have typically been sort of frozen out of this process. We did see in 2021, Bain Shukla was among 4 candidates shortlisted to replace then outgoing Massachusetts U.S. Attorney Andrew Lelling. Any thoughts, panel, on maybe she'll make it to the bench this time? She didn't get that other post, but maybe we'll see her become a judge.
It seems certainly likely or possible. I think we're all going to be waiting to see what comes next.
Absolutely. There'll be some public hearings coming up. I believe she's before the Governor's Council on July 31st. All right, we'll keep watching this. We're going to take a quick break here on the Rundown. We'll be back to talk about proposed legislation that could reduce the burden on homeowners struggling to pay past due property taxes. Plus, with the Summer Olympics upon us, we want to know what your favorite game is. Email the rundown at nepm.org. We'll be back in a minute. Welcome back to The Rundown. I'm Carrie Saldo. Joining me this week to chat about the biggest news stories from here in the 413, NEPM's own Dusty Christensen, Namu Sempath, a reporter with the Springfield Republican, and joining us by phone, Eric Lesser, a former state senator. All right, gang, let's get back into it here. Headline on this one: legal advocates say bill could help homeowners pay past due property taxes. Namu, you reported this one for The Republican. You were at a recent press conference from where there were 3 different organizations who were talking about their support for this bill. Give us an overview of what this proposed law would do.
Definitely. So basically, this proposed bill would reduce the burden on homeowners who don't have mortgages to pay back their
property taxes that they owe to the cities and towns,
yes,
right?
Yes, exactly.
And I think part of what I gleaned from your reporting is just the rates at which this can escalate quite quickly. I think one example was it was a tax bill that was around $1,600, but it balloons quite quickly,
exactly.
Right? Because of what?
So basically, it's interest, essentially. And so this woman, Ashley Mills from Springfield, she inherited her home from her grandmother, lives there now with her disabled mother and a young toddler, and they had gotten the home worth, I believe it was $200,000.
Yeah, close to $230,000, something like that.
Something like that. And they had an unpaid tax bill to the city that was worth $20,000. Within a few years, I don't remember the exact amount of years, but it had ballooned to $200,000 that she had to pay back. And obviously, she was already struggling with the $20,000. So to jump to $200,000 is quite a lot. And so this bill would help reduce that burden for those people who, like Todd Kaplan from my story said, are cash rich and house poor.
And as the state law currently stands, property owners without a mortgage, which was this place that Miss Mills was in, they fall behind on their tax debt with the municipality, and they are quite at risk of not only losing the home, but the equity that they put into the house, because then the cities and towns can go ahead and sell the property because of those back taxes, but then the cities and towns have been keeping that difference between what the house had been worth and what it is now worth on the open market, which is huge in some instances, the amount of equity that these people are losing as a result of this. Now, I can hear cities and towns screaming, well, people, just pay your property taxes, and this wouldn't be so much of an issue. But something I read that Stephanie Barry and you reported in May, Namu, was that the number of foreclosed homes sold due to tax delinquency in Springfield has far outpaced any other cities and towns in Massachusetts. In a 7-year span, the city of Springfield foreclosed on 129 houses to collect almost $3.5 million in taxes. And in so doing, it caused residents to lose $15 million in equity that they had secured in those properties, according to a study conducted by the Pacific Legal Foundation. But Eric Lesser, in May, Judge Michael Callan ruled that it was unconstitutional for the city of Springfield to foreclose on a home when the tax debt amounts to less than the value of the property. And Callan's decision also mirrors one that was issued by the U.S. Supreme Court last year. So given these rulings, why is this practice continuing?
So the way the Judge Callan's ruling is, that's exactly right, applied a Supreme Court decision from last year in 2023 that was based off of a similar law in Minnesota. Just backing up a second, Massachusetts, Minnesota, there's a handful of other states that have this underlying law, which essentially allows a city to pocket, the entire equity value of a house, even if the tax bill or the owed tax bill with interest is far lower. So in the case in Springfield, there was a woman, Ashley Mills. She owned a home. She had inherited the house, I believe, from her grandmother, so there was no mortgage. She lived in that house with her 2-year-old son and her disabled mother, and she owed $1,600 in property taxes that she had fallen behind on. Because of the extreme interest payments that are applied to back taxes, that $1,600 went to a $22,000 tax bill. Springfield went to foreclose on the house. The house was worth $220,000. So you're talking about the city taking 10 times what even the interest payment would be on the back taxes. And Judge Callan applying that Minnesota that the U.S. Supreme Court decision from Minnesota basically said this is an unconstitutional taking based off the Supreme Court's interpretation of a very similar situation in Minnesota. Legislature, please fix this Massachusetts state law, which right now is not in compliance with the Constitution. And to their credit, the legislature has taken it up. It's in the conference budget for the FY25 budget, and it's now on the governor's desk. So we'll see where that goes in the next few days. But this is, I think, a great example of a law that really hurts people. I don't think anyone disagrees with the need to pay back taxes, but the idea that you would be able to pocket a windfall far beyond the taxes that you actually owe, even with interest, is unfair.
And we'll see where this goes at the legislative level. But the thing I'm kind of tripping on here is that even if it is adopted by the governor, Dusty, municipalities still get to choose whether they incorporate a repayment plan or possible interest waiver into their local ordinances. So do you think there's an incentive here to do that?
Yeah, it seems like maybe not. And, I did want to point out, Namu's reporting has been really great on this. And something she pointed out in another story about another person facing eviction, Josephus Grant, was just the reasons why people get into this kind of debt. And a lot of it, in many cases, is medical debt, something that does not exist in many countries across the world, but that 1 in 5 people face here to the point where they are considering changing their living situation. So I think that's a really important piece of context here.
Well, it's an issue that we're absolutely going to keep watching here. I want to spend a few minutes updating you on a topic we talked about last week. Multiple news organizations reported about the massive problems at Pioneer Valley Health and Rehabilitation in South Hadley. Greta Yoakum and James Forster this week reported that a state judge has appointed and yesterday affirmed a temporary receiver for Pioneer Valley Health and Rehabilitation and 2 other nursing homes that are operated and owned by Blue Point Health. Now, the State Department of Public Health received complaints that the staff at the 3 facilities weren't getting paid. They faced lack of supplies, among other issues. The story goes on to say that, citing concerns that unpaid workers would not show up to work to care for patients, the petition asked for a receiver to protect patients, quote, from imminent danger of death or serious physical injury. Eric Lesser, in 2020, when you were a state senator, you warned of a potential statewide nursing home crisis. Here we are 4 years later. Is what's happening here at Pioneer Valley Health? Are you concerned that other sites might fall to a similar fate as Pioneer Valley Health has?
The bottom line, Carrie, is we're at the tip of the iceberg in terms of nursing home crisis in our state. We already are in a crisis, but we're just at the beginnings of how bad it can get. Just a few things for people to consider. The baby boomers are just beginning to enter kind of nursing home age in the top time where they'll require nursing home care. Costs are skyrocketing. There's chronic labor shortages. There's immense challenges with Medicaid and Mass Health reimbursement rates. The bottom line is that it just costs much more money to safely care for nursing home patients than Mass Health is currently reimbursing nursing homes.
And I know
for.
that this is such a complex issue, but is there one thing in your mind that needs to change to help better serve these patients?
The single most important thing is to increase the Mass Health rates and then increase the oversight along with those rates. Pay people what they need to be paid to take care of elderly people, to provide safe care, and make sure that there's strong oversight once that money goes out the door to ensure that people are being taken care of.
All right. Well, now we're going to move on to our mental palate cleanse of the morning. Cue the music, please, Kara Foster. That's right. The Olympics, they start today, in case you've missed it. We do have one Olympian from Western Mass, the 2-time Olympic medalist Gabby Thomas. She started running track and field in Western Mass and made history at Harvard University, where she also studied neurobiology and launched her mission to make a difference in the field of healthcare. Now, Dusty, I know from your reporting earlier this month, chess is your game of choice. And I jokingly sort of Googled, will chess make it into the Olympics? And there was a push for Paris, but they didn't make it. Tell us about your love for chess.
It's a more physical game than you would imagine, especially with these classical games, which can go on for 8 hours. You have to be mentally and physically fit to be able to last that long in a game of chess. I love much shorter games. There's been a controversy over the world's top player refusing to play in the biggest tournament in chess over the length of those games, preferring instead some of these more engaging rapid and blitz games. I have fallen in love with the game during COVID, which many people across our region have. I reported for NEPM that the sort of global chess boom that's happened in recent years has sent ripples through Western Mass as well. I would love to see chess grow bigger on the international stage. For the Olympics, I'm going to be really focused on that track and field team, hoping Gabby Thomas wins a gold, and the basketball as well. That's, I think, my favorite.
Absolutely. Nemu, how about for you?
Well, I was just going to add to you. Do you think that the Queen's Gambit show on Netflix was the boom, the reason for the
For sure. It played a really big role. So, too, did a cheating scandal at the highest levels of chess. The Queen's Gambit was amazing, and I think...
Fantastic series.
Yes,
Yeah.
so good.
Eric Lesser, how about for you? A game? Are you watching the Olympics? What's on your mind?
I'm excited for the Simone Biles comeback, and I'm very curious about how the swimming in the Seine River is going to work. So I'm going to keep an eye on that.
I was in Paris in the fall, and I had previously been to Paris. I have to say that there was a marked visual difference in the Seine. I think the mayor swam in it recently with some of her staff members. For quite some time, she was backstroking and all this other glorious stuff. I don't think you could pay me yet to swim in the Seine.
No.
I am hopeful, though, for the swimmers that they have done a good enough job. And they do test the water ahead of the events. They're very serious about it, but they have taken... It was like, as I said, it was a huge visual change on how that looked. I, too, am going to be watching the gymnastics. I'm a dancer from the time I was a very young girl, so I love watching all things gymnastics related. All right, so the Olympics will continue through August 11th, and there's tons of fun stuff happening at our area libraries, watch parties, and other events. You can learn more about that at nepm.org. All right, let's head to our predictions, scoops, and praise portion of the show where we ask our panel to spill the tea about a story they're working on or make a prediction about the news or maybe heap some praise on a newsworthy nugget. Eric Lesser, I'll start with you today.
I just to our earlier conversation, I want to really give a shout out to the team at Community Legal Aid in Western Mass. They took on Ashley's case in Springfield, and it's hopefully going to lead to a real law change here in Massachusetts, which is great for them.
How about for you and Nemu?
So actually, I did a lot of the UMass protest and arrest coverage earlier this spring, and the Republican and the Associated Press are working on a collaboration story featuring kind of the fallout of the students, what they've faced after these arrests. And, there's 130 some people who were arrested at UMass. The AP is also doing a national story, focusing on other schools across the country that, face that arrest and fallout. So I'm excited that'll come out next week.
Absolutely. Jesse, you've been following that case too. It's been in court. There have been some dispositions more recently, right?
That's right. But many of these students continue to face disciplinary charges at the university level. And, many of them are continuing to face criminal charges as their cases play out.
How about for you this week? Predictions, scoop,
I'll
praise?
go something more lighthearted, Olympic related. Maybe I've got a uncontroversial and a controversial one. My uncontroversial one would be that I'm really excited to see Sha'Carri Richardson compete in the 100-meter race as well as the 4x100. She missed out on the 2020 Olympic Games very unfairly after testing positive, I believe, for cannabis. I don't think anybody would argue that's a performance-enhancing substance. So I'm really excited to see her rock in, and as well as Gabby Thomas. My spicy prediction is that the world seems to be catching up to the United States when it comes to basketball. A lot of the top players in recent years in the NBA have been international players. I know Boston fans who have two of their players on the U.S. team may not like to hear this, but I'm making the spicy prediction that the USA men's basketball team is going to lose the gold medal. Yes, you heard it here first.
I'm going to quickly predict that Springfield-based Merriam-Webster is going to update its definition of brat on the heels of this Charlie XCX craze, and they're going to reframe the word as honest, blunt, and despite being a little unsure, ultimately someone who believes in themselves. The rundown, thanks to the panel this morning, Nemu Sumpath, Dusty Christian, and Eric Lesser. The rundown, it heads onto Recharge. We will be back September 6th, Friday, September 6th. We'll see you then. I'm Carrie Saldo.